Alright, fellow Slayers, time for the second episode of the day, which is Ted. As Buffy, Xander, and Willow return from patrolling, they discuss a lack of vampire activity Spike and Drusilla presume dead. Angel, who is still recovering from his ordeal with Drusilla, has also confirmed the Order of Turaga has been called off. However, when the three enter Buffy's house, they find Joyce kissing a strange man. Joyce introduces her friend, Ted Buchanan, a salesman. He tells them he has been seeing Joyce for quite some time now. He charms Will and Xander with computer talk and cooking, respectively. Ted promises to make it up to Buffy for surprising her. Buffy becomes uncomfortable with Ted's traditional mannerisms. This is not calmed by Ted's offer of miniature golf. That night, Buffy beats a vampire to unusual violence before killing him, worrying Giles that something's troubling her. She refuses to divulge, but Giles secretly has a good idea of what is happening. Later that night, Buffy asks Angel for his take on things while she tends to his wounds. He says that her mother shouldn't be forced to be alone, and she should give Ted the benefit of the doubt. She reluctantly complies with this idea. Meanwhile, Giles approaches Janie for the first time since she was possessed. She tells him that she's still not fully over what happened, and asks that he give her space until she feels ready. He regretfully leaves, while Jenny is also left unsatisfied with how the encounter went. The golf outing goes poorly, as Joyce has revealed Buffy's antisocial behavior. When Buffy cheats, Ted lectures and threatens her with a slapping out of sight of the group, but his cheerfulness comes back full force when rejoining everyone else. Joyce does believe this incident happened, claiming Ted thinks the world of her. Buffy recruits her friends to spy on Ted. Under an assumed name, Buffy talks her way into Ted's workspace. He has never missed a day of work, doesn't get sick, and is getting engaged. Ted suspects Joyce on his desk, but the part with Buffy is folded under. At dinner, Ted denies the engagement, but confesses to Joyce that he has hopes they will one day get married. Buffy slips out for some slang and on her return, finds Ted has read her diary. He threatens to tell Joyce about her being a slayer unless she toes the line. She defies him and is slapped. In the resulting brawl, Ted falls down the stairs. Joyce then finds him, seemingly dead. The next day, after talking with the cops, Buffy's in a haze of guilt. Will and Xander discover Ted's cookies are drugged. Cordelia finds Ted has had 4 wives since 1957, all of whom have since disappeared. That night, Giles patrols since Buffy's dealing with a lot already. Jane surprises him to apologize for earlier harsh words, but the conversation is derailed when a vampire attacks and Jenny attempts to shoot it. Instead of hitting the vampire, she accidentally shoots Giles in the side. As the vampire bursts into laughter, Giles uses distraction to pull the bolt out of himself and dust the vampire. He and Jenny then laugh over the misfortune, and she takes him to the hospital. Buffy again finds Ted in her room. The second fight reveals he is a robot. He escapes to find Joyce. The Scooby Gang investigates Ted's bunker, decorated in 50s style. Xander finds the 4 wives, all of whom are dead. Ted confronts and astonishes Joyce. His malfunctions reveal his true intentions, and Buffy knocks and destroys him out with a frying pan. The next day, Joyce swears off meth forever and says that from now on, the 2 summers women shall be manless. Buffy suggests renting a chick flick. The gang returns to school the next day, with Buffy cleared of all charges, and discussing their discoveries about Ted. Apparently, real Ted Buchanan was a sickly and unsuccessful inventor in the 1950s whose wife left him. In desperation, he built a robot version of himself, a better Ted, possibly the man he thought his wife should have. The robot then kidnapped Ted's wife and held her captive in his bunker until she died. The robot then sought out other women resembling Ted's dead wife and repeated the process again and again. All seems to have turned to normalcy, although Buffy, Will, Xander, and Cordelia once again walk in on adults kissing. This time the 2 being Giles and Jenny in the library. Ooh. So now let's take a look at some continuity surrounding this episode. This is the first human impersonating robot to appear in the series. The theme will be reused in later episodes such as I Was Made to Love You, Intervention, and Villains. Angel is still recovering from his ordeal with Drusilla in What's My Line Part 2. Giles approaches Jenny for the first time since she was possessed. She tells him that she's still not fully over what happened in the Dark Age. During the episode, Ted and other characters use specific language to tease the audience about Ted's robot personality. Ted uses the phrase, "I'm not wired that way," a couple of times. An employee at Ted's workplace describes him as a machine. Joyce said that every home should have one of him, implying that he is like a house robot. In I Was Made to Love You, Dawn wonders if April might be like Ted, knowing that, in the timeline according to the character's alternate memories, she was wondering if there was more than one of him. Willow keeps part of Ted for educational purposes, which certainly helped when she reverse engineered the Buffy bot. Cordelia turns out to be a better investigator than Willow and Xander when she uncovers Ted's past, foreshadowing a future partnership with Angel Investigations in Los Angeles. Xander notes at the beginning of the episode how quiet Sunnydale's undead population has been since the events of the previous episode, but he quickly stops to chastise himself for potentially jinxing their good fortune. Buffy and Willow criticize him for doing the exact same thing as School Hard. Giles and Ginny Calendar rekindle their relationship, at least until Innocence. Ted threatens to put Buffy in a mental institution, which we will find out later she has been in before. Giles mentions that killing a human being is a hard thing to bear. He himself will murder Ben in The Gift. Angel reveals that the contract on Buffy's life with Uraraka has been cancelled, which is why they send no more assassins after their defeat of Arcturus, Mephisto, and Patrice. Xander mentions a creature feature, referring to a genre of television shows from the 1960s to 1980s that rebroadcast old horror movies. Dawn later says feature creature in Tabula Rasa. So now let's take a look at some production notes surrounding this episode. According to David Fury, when he questioned the amazing technological abilities of Sunnydale's residents, Joss Whedon replied, "You're just a way for thinking it. The Hellmouth should be able to provide us with anything we want to do. The energy that comes out of it makes mad scientists out of humans who then go ahead and create something evil." Ted was shot during the Halloween holiday. Many members of the cast and crew came to set in costume. Kristen Sutherland wore 1950s clothes like Ted's first wife, and Sarah Michelle Gellar came as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, along with her dog Toto. Ted's cooking skills are an inside reference to John Ritter's famous sitcom Three's Company, in which his character is a chef. During the filming of the final confrontation between Buffy and Ted, both Sarah Michelle Gellar and John Ritter were ill. Gellar had the flu, while Ritter had food poisoning from the night before. Ugh, that's not good. So now let's take a look at some pop culture references. Xander quotes, "So many have come, so few have conquered," a reference to the famous Latin phrase, Veni Vidi Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. Buffy references The Stepford Wives, a 1975 horror film about women who are unusually subservient to their husbands. Upon seeing Ted's multiple marriage certificates, Xander suggests that Ted might be a Mormon. This is a reference to the longer practiced polygamy by the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormon religion. Buffy says to Joyce, "I guess we're Thelma and Louising it again." In the 1991 movie Thelma and Louise, the two women go on a road trip during which they kill a would-be rapist, blow things up, break numerous laws, and generally bond with one another. Captain and Tennille are a married pop music duo. Referring to Buffy's concern over Ted's presence in her mother's life, Xander says, "I think we were in Sigmund Freud territory. Darcy's psychiatrist is known as the father of modern psychoanalysis." And now let's take a look at some other fun facts about this episode. John Ritter claims this episode influenced his understanding of his own stepdaughter. Alison Hannigan lists this as her third favorite episode to shoot. John Ritter was the best. We'd all just hang on his trailer and be like, "Hi, John Ritter," and he didn't care. And we got to shoot at a mini golf place. The plot of this episode is similar to that of the 1987 horror film The Stepfather, where a teenage girl suspects that her stepfather, who is obsessed with old-fashioned values, is a serial killer who marries women and murders them when they fail to live up to his exceedingly high expectations. Yeah, I can definitely see how this fits into this episode. So overall, I think this episode is kind of interesting, and I like the fact that it's a nice change of pace from what happened last episode. So, yeah. So overall, I give the episode Ted 4 vampire steaks out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in a bit as we take a look at the final episode of the day, Bad Eggs. So, until then, here endeth the lesson.